I wouldn't call this a bad figure. It is a very well made figure in fact, but there are small little things here and there that may deter some people who are sensitive about which figure to add to their collection because they have space issues. Hi and welcome back to the channel. I'm Steven today with a low budget scale figure review again by a brand that I'm kind of reviewing for the first time, but at the same time, this is not really my first time reviewing a figure made by Hapitopi. So according to myfigurecollection.net in their database, there are only 4 Hapitopi figures, even though they have been around for at least a couple of years. And the reason for that is that they are actually a part of Animester, at least until recently. For today, we are looking at Hapitopi's 1/6 scale Chi Kai Te Sheng Bunny Girl, an artwork by Machi, released in China back in April 2025, worldwide in Japan, July 2025. So for everyone else who pre-ordered this figure, she came out back in July, 2 months ago. And the official price in China would be 259 Chinese yuan, internationally 7,500 Japanese yen at 1/6 scale. So another low budget scale figure that is under 10,000 yen, which is offering great value for money. This figure is without its flaws. But before that, a quick mention about the height of this figure, including the base all the way to the top of her bunny ears over here, exactly 30 centimeters. If I were to deduct the bunny ears and only go for head height, 27 centimeters, so this is indeed 1/6 scale. And speaking of the packaging, the box over here, once again, kinda trash, but it is a low budget figure, can't expect more. And yeah, the Chinese name is right here, Chi Kai Te Sheng, I can read this one. And the funny part is the second sentence over here, Zhongshan Bunny Girl Hand Puppet. Hand puppet. To be honest, this is a pretty ugly box, not very nice to look at, but at least it is tough enough. It is a bit harder than your typical paper box you see in lower budget anime figures. This is a bit thicker in material, so it protected my figure over here because I chose a very stupid shipping method in order to cut cost in shipping cost, and then I ended up with something, yeah, at least the box protected the figure, so I'm thankful for that. Anyways, I can only give this box a score of 5.5 out of 10, perfectly average. So now we move on to the sculpting department of this figure. I look for a few things. The first thing is that how accurate it is compared to the official product pictures provided by the figure company when they placed the figure on pre-order. And then there are other things like quality control related stuff, ugly gaps or seam lines, glue leaking out, parts not fitting together, stuff like that. Mold lines. So there are no mold lines over here because this is kind of a premium scale figure, not a price figure, so I would not expect to see any mold lines. The seam lines overall, at least on the side of her head over here, is mostly quite clean but not perfect because there is one issue I'm about to point out. As for everything else, like glue leaking out between parts that don't fit very well and stuff like that, I could not find anything to complain about. And speaking of the sculpt, the pose of the figure, her arms and everything, the face as well, compare it to the official product pictures, they look identical. So this is mostly a good figure, not that I would expect any less because Hapitopi has ties with Animester, which has a good reputation. However, speaking of seam lines, there is one minor defect or quality control issue. I'm not sure if this can be called a defect, maybe it is. So it is on the right side of her hip over here. Yeah, on the Chinese dress. As you can see, the front half and the back half of her Chinese dress is not aligning properly. So this could be a part fitting issue, or maybe a manufacturing error. There are a few possibilities I can think of. The front piece is up, higher up like that, and that is not very nice to look at, but admittedly, I'm just finding fault with the figure because that is my job, reviewing the figure over here. This is something that nobody will notice when the figure is on display on the shelf unless you are an armpit enthusiast. I suppose you're always staring at her armpits, which in that case I suggest buying some other figures where they are swinging a sword like that and then you get to see their armpits all day you want, such as Saber Lily Distant Avalon. One more thing to note about the sculpting of this figure, which I don't think can be considered a flaw, but it does look unnatural, and that would be this piece of cloth over here between her legs. It is like floating out and it just doesn't look natural. It almost looks like she has a boner of some kind, a boner that is green in color. So this piece of cloth, ideally, it should be sticking on her leg like that, like sticking backwards instead of floating out in mid-air. The way it is folding and floating out or curving out, it does not look natural to me. One more thing would be these two G-string straps that she's pulling out like that. Ideally, the G-strings need to be straight, right? Because you are stretching it out. But once again, this is me nitpicking about realism in anime figures or anime characters, which almost never exist. So with the sculpting department of this figure, not including the face, I can give it maybe a 7 out of 10. Above average, but not higher than that because of that flaw over there underneath her armpit. And also, the detail levels on this figure in general is just average. Meanwhile, for her face, I can give it an easy 8.5 or even 9 out of 10. So speaking of the face over there, I think that slight blush on her face is the critical factor in making her face look more attractive. So they got it right over here. She is really pretty. She's nice to look at. I wouldn't change a single thing over here. Speaking of faces, and Animester, that means getting a second face part. That's right. You get those 3D eyes, the figure stares back into you when you look at her from different angles. I'm not exactly a big fan of it, so right after unboxing the figure, I just kept this part back into the box, but some people like to display figures with this unique part over here, so you have that option to do so. Meanwhile, the paint work on this figure is mostly excellent. There are no paint scratches or paint bleeding to be found on the figure. And shading in general is on the low side. You can see a little bit of it, especially on the skin area. Nowadays, they love doing this. Your skin is pretty much skin color, and then on certain spots around the elbow region, the finger regions, and so on, you can see some pink color on it. Somehow Chinese brands, they love doing this because it is a very effective way of making the figure look more detailed. But at the same time, I feel like her fingers are too reddish, like too much pink paint being applied over there. It almost looks like she just had a door slammed into her hand earlier and it is now swollen. So there's a bit too much pink on her fingers. Is it an issue? Not really, just an observation of mine. You look at the two black color straps over here on top of her opai, you get some pink color surrounding the black color strap. It is meant to be a form of shading, but it is too much. It looks unnatural. The gold color parts, the tiny detail parts around her bunny ears, the gold color trims on her dress, mostly fine over here, very precisely painted, and even the decal work on the Chinese dress around her waist region, they are very nicely done. So I would say that paint work on this figure is mostly fine. Even on the back of the figure, her pale blue color hair, there is a very light amount of shading near the very edges of her hair. This is the way it should be done, a very gradual, a very light shading. So I feel like they have overdone it on the skin region at least, the pink color shading. So my score when it comes to paint work on this figure would be... I find it hard to give a score on this one. It is not exactly a flaw, but at the same time, it looks unnatural. Well, let's give her a 7 out of 10 for paint work because there really isn't much wrong to it. And of course, on her right leg, you do get a fabric stocking on only one leg, and there are stitching lines on the back of her leg, but it looks nice over here, so no problems at all with her right leg and the fabric stocking. Last part about this figure would be the base, which once again, it is a low budget figure, so I wasn't expecting much. You're getting a matte finish, dark blue, dark violet base over here, which is not as easy to scratch. That is the good news. The bad news is that this figure is way too wobbly, way too shaky. I did not like this at all. I wish that her right leg was also plugged into the base, right? So this is a slightly heavy figure for a 1/6 scale figure, and you do have metal foot peg on the left leg, but it is not enough. As you can see, this figure is way too wobbly, and I'm afraid that if I shake the figure too much like this, one day the figure would break off from the base somehow. Yeah, this is not good. And the stability score on this figure is like a 3.5 out of 10, way below average. So this is not good at all. I would even say that this is very scary. So my conclusion for this figure, can I recommend it? It is still a yes for people who want to collect lower budget figures because that is all you can afford. By all means get one as long as you like the character design. But for everyone else, I know you have limited space, you don't want to waste money on low budget figures, you want your shelf to be full of premium figures, then in that case, I would say you should skip this figure. Yes, this is not a bad figure by all means. There are barely any flaws on it other than a misaligned dress on the side and maybe unnatural shading on the skin. There are almost nothing else quite wrong with the figure. Yeah, maybe other than the shakiness of this thing. So I wouldn't call this a bad figure. It is a very well made figure in fact, but there are small little things here and there that may deter some people who are sensitive about which figure to add to their collection because they have space issues or other problems. Yeah. So until then, I hope that this review is helpful or informative to you. If it is, please to give this video a like, subscribe to this channel for more content like this. And until then, thanks for watching. I'll see you soon. Goodbye.